CCS 7th graders. Again, I am Miss Misha Moore from Jackson Middle School, and today our primary focus will be figurative language. And one thing that I want to reiterate from previous weeks is that words mean things. Our essential question that will guide us through our thinking today is, how do authors use language to communicate through poetry? So today we'll be delving into some poetry and looking particularly at the language that the author is using throughout the poem. Today's focus: I can analyze and interpret examples of figurative language used in Langston Hughes' Mother to Son and Dreams poems. The first thing that we'll do is do a think aloud, where you'll be able to share some of your thinking to yourself. Then we'll go through a figurative versus literal mini lesson, and then we will go with our teacher model and guided practice, and then you'll have a chance to practice on your own and also engage in your reader's workshop. Materials needed. For today's lesson, as always, you need your writer's notebook or a scratch sheet of paper, a pen, a pencil, and then, of course, today's text. So I want you to pause your screens for a second, and I want you to think to yourself, just by looking at today's reading title, Mother to Son. Make a prediction about what the poem is mostly about based solely on the title. So now that you've had some time to think to yourself what you think this poem is going to be about based on the title, Mother to Son, let's share out some of our thinking. Looking at the title, Mother to Son, Ms. Moore can infer that this particular piece of poetry is going to be about a mother's message to their son. So before we delve into the text, I want us to discuss some key concepts that will help us and support us in our learning today. So as 7th graders, you probably already know a lot about figurative language and the different types of figurative language, but today I'm going to briefly clarify the difference between figurative and literal meanings of words. So when you look at the word figurative, typically when you engage with figurative language in a text, you're not necessarily saying exactly what you mean. You do compare, you exaggerate, and you understate the situation. You use different types of figurative language like similes, metaphors, hyperboles, and other figures of speech to make your writing more exciting. So typically when you think about a writer and why they choose to use figurative language, it's just to make their writing a little bit more colorful and a little bit more engaging for readers. So when you look at the word literal, it's literally what you're saying. It's exactly what you're stating or what the author is trying to say. You say exactly what you mean, you make no comparison, and you do not exaggerate or understate the situation. It's literally what you're saying, or exactly what you're saying, excuse me. All right, literal versus figurative. So before we engage with our text today, I want to go through and provide you some examples of the literal descriptions versus the figurative descriptions. So, the grass looks green. The grass looks green. That's exactly what the author wants to communicate in this particular situation. On the other hand, if we add a little bit more colorful language or engaging language, when you look at the figurative description, it says the grass looks like spiky green hair. That's a simile because we're making a comparison using like or as. All right, let's move on to the second example. Sand feels rough. The author is literally saying or saying exactly what they mean. The sand feels rough. No colorful language has been used with this particular example. When I look at the figurative description, on the other hand, I see that the sand is solid water. So I see that the author is comparing sand to being solid water. And again, if you know anything about metaphors, you know that metaphors is just a comparison between two unlike things without using like or as. Our third example here says that the flower smells sweet. So, literally, the flower smells sweet. The author is not making any comparisons. He's not exaggerating. The author is simply stating the flower smells sweet. Now, on the other hand, when we look at our more figurative description, it says the flower has the sweetest smelling petals in the world. So here we have an example of a hyperbole, which is an extreme exaggeration. So the author just wants you to believe that the flower is extremely sweet. It smells extremely sweet. It's an exaggeration here. So again, the author is using an exaggeration here with the hyperbole. Grasshoppers make a high-pitched noise. So this is our final example. So here the author is literally stating that grasshoppers make a high-pitched noise. And if you've ever heard a grasshopper, you know that that is true. Grasshoppers are fiddlers who play their legs. So this is an example of personification. So as a reader and as a 7th grader, I should know that fiddlers is some type of instrument. And I know that literally, or in my world, that grasshoppers cannot play a fiddle. So the author is using personification here. So he's given human-like characteristics to a grasshopper, and we know that in our world, it's not possible for a grasshopper to play with a fiddle. All right, so before we engage in our first read, I want you to think through the following questions. So as we're reading, I want you to answer the question, who is the speaker? How does the speaker describe their life? And then I also want you to think through what is the poem mostly about? So for the past several weeks, we've been working on getting the gist. So as we engage with the text during this first round, I want you to get the gist and tell Ms. Moore, what is the text or what is the poem mostly about? All right, mother to son. I'm going to read this text aloud, and again, if you want to, I want you to make sure that you follow along with me, line by line. And again, we're answering these 3 questions. Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, eyes have been climbing on, and reaching landings, and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark, where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, 'cause you finds it kinda harder. Don't you fall now. For eyes are still going, honey. Eyes are still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So now that I've read this poem initially, and if you need to, you can pause the screen and reread the poem on your own. However, we're gonna keep moving forward. So, based on my first read, I know that, or I've been able to identify that the speaker is the mother. So after my initial read, I can answer the question, who is the speaker? And I can identify that the speaker is the mother. So how does the speaker describe their life? So based on my initial reading, the mother is describing their life as being somewhat challenging. How does the speaker describe their life? The mother describes their life as being somewhat challenging or a challenge. What is the poem mostly about? After this first read, Ms. Moore can say that my initial gist statement is that the mother is telling their son about the many ups and downs in life. Again, what is the poem mostly about? The mother is explaining to son the many ups and downs in life. So as you go line for line, you will see that through the different pieces of textual evidence, you will see the examples of the many ups and downs that the mother is describing. Like she talks about the splinters, the tacks in the floor, and how some of the boards have been torn up. However, what we can infer here is that things have been hard and hurtful for the mother or painful for the mother. And we can also infer here, based on what we just read and from our textual evidence, that the mother says eyes are still climbing. So that means that she's still going. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna take a second look at the poem and we're gonna go line for line, and we are going to be looking for what is the figurative language used in a passage, and then we're also going to be looking at literally like what is the author stating, and then thinking through as readers like why did the author make this particular choice for this particular word or phrase. Students, what you can do, you can actually pause the screen and you can go back and reread the first 10 lines of the poem because that's what we're going to be working with as I model the process of identifying the figurative language used versus the literal language. Okay, so after looking at the second line of the poem and identifying its literal meaning, life for me ain't been no crystal stair, the mother saying that life hasn't been a staircase. Figuratively, what I see here is that the author, it's a metaphor. The author is comparing the mother's life to a staircase. And when I think about why the author chose to include this particular phrase, like the figurative language here, it's to express how life can have its ups and downs. So when you think about the many ups and downs that you may experience as a young scholar and also just in life itself, the author here, Hughes, has chosen to compare the mother's life to a staircase. So figuratively, the author is talking about how the mother life is very much so similar to that of a staircase. You go up and down. Life has its ups and downs. Another example of some figurative language that's used here, it says, it's had its tax in it. So I know that here, the author is using an extended metaphor or a metaphor to kind of compare or tell me figuratively that life is painful. I don't know if you've ever stepped on a thumbtack or anything sharp, but it's painful. So my analysis here, why did the author choose this particular phrase, word or phrase? And again, it's to express how life can have its ups and downs, and sometimes life can be very painful. And then my last example from this first section of the text is literally the author says, in splinters. So in this fourth line, Hughes is saying, in splinters. I don't know if you've ever had a splinter, but it can be very aggravating and somewhat annoying, and it can hurt. So figuratively, we know that when we interpret this language, life can be hurtful and life can be annoying. And again, when you think about why Langston Hughes chose to use this particular language, it is again to express that life has as many ups and downs. Sometimes it can be annoying and quite hurtful. All right, so we're going to continue to practice with this particular example. And again, if you need to pause your screen and reread this particular section of the text, we're going to engage with the last 10 lines. So example that I pulled out again is that, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So again, what is the figurative language used in the passage? So here, I know that Hughes is again using that metaphor. We see a lot of metaphors throughout this particular poem, and it's referring to the challenges the mother has experienced during life. So all the many things that they have gone through. And I said, why did the author choose this particular word or phrase? So based on my understanding of what the meaning and also what the author is trying to convey here, life hasn't been easy. It's had as many ups and downs, and the mother has gone through many challenges. However, when you keep going back and through the lines of the poem, you'll see that she keeps climbing, even though life for the mother has not been easy. All right, so now what we're going to do, of course, I need for you to pause the screen because you have to practice this on your own. So today, our primary objective or learning target is to make sure that we can interpret the author's use of figurative language. So again, our objective for today is interpreting the use of the author's figurative language, particularly with Langston Hughes' poem, Mother to Son. And now we're going to practice with the poem, Dreams. All right, so Ms. Moore is going to read aloud the text, Dreams by Langston Hughes, for you. After I finish reading the text aloud, I want you to pause the screen and make sure that you read it aloud to yourself and also practice identifying some of the figurative language used by Hughes. And also think through, why did the author choose this particular word or phrase in this particular poem? Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. So pause the video here, and I want you to go back and reread this text one more time, or however many times you need to read it, and I want you to complete the chart on the right-hand side of the screen. Once you're done, come back, and we'll check your understanding. So hopefully you were able to interpret some of the figurative language used by Hughes. In this particular poem, he uses quite a bit of figurative language. You have some personification. You also have, again, some metaphors that he uses to explain what could happen when you potentially let go of your dreams. So now we're going to check for your understanding. So the first piece of language that I pulled out from this particular excerpt is that for if dreams die. And the first thing that I noticed figuratively is that the author is personifying dreams and explaining what can happen when dreams fade away. So here we see that for if dreams can die, and as 7th graders, we know that dreams cannot die in our world. However, figuratively, what Langston Hughes is saying here, that they can fade away or go away. So when I think about, or when Ms. Moore is thinking about why did Langston Hughes choose to use this particular phrase, word or phrase for if dreams die, I can say that he's trying to communicate what could happen when you let go of your dreams. So he's trying to place an emphasis on if you let go of your dreams, he says for if dreams die. So hypothetically, if you let go of your dreams, they'll potentially go away or fade away. The second piece of language that I pulled out that stood out to me figuratively was life is a broken-winged bird. So figuratively, the author is using a metaphor to explain what can happen to damaged dreams. So if you have a bird that has a broken wing, of course, that represents that the bird is somewhat damaged or broken. And when a bird cannot fly or use its wings, it can't go anywhere in life. So figuratively, Langston is saying that if you let go of your dreams and if you don't hold fast to your dreams, then it can become somewhat like a broken-winged bird. And it's explaining what can happen when your dreams are damaged or when you let go of your dreams. And again, he's trying to communicate to us as readers. He's trying to teach us or show us that what could happen when you let go of your dreams. There are some other examples in the second stanza of this particular poem, like when you look at the last line or the last two lines, life is a barren field frozen with snow. So when you think about what he's saying here is that if you let go of your dreams, in this particular example, it can become like a barren field. And if you know what the word barren means, it means that it's empty. It does not grow. It doesn't grow. You can't grow crops in a barren field because it's empty. So it says frozen with snow. So what Ms. Moore knows about things being frozen, it means that it's at a standstill. Like nothing is moving, nothing is growing, and you kind of lose your purpose in life. So as you went back through and reread this particular poem, Dreams by Langston Hughes, I'm hopeful that you were able to find some different examples of figurative language and also kind of explaining and understanding why Langston Hughes chose the words and phrases that he chose. So now you're going to get a little bit more practice with identifying figurative language and also thinking through and analyzing why the author chooses the words and phrases that they choose. As seventh graders, of course, we need to go through and complete our reader's workshop. Your teacher may have individual expectations for you at your respective school. However, we should be reading 15 to 30 minutes each day. As you approach your reading for today, I want you to think through and pay close attention to the figurative meaning of the words and phrases chosen by the author. So again, as you're reading through, ask yourself the following questions. Why did the author choose this specific word or phrase, and how does it affect the meaning of the text? As always, as readers and writers, it is important for us to give credit where it is due. Our wonderful text today came from Common Lit. We were able to adapt this resource from this platform, Mother, the Sun, and Dreams. So as always, Ms. Moore really enjoyed reading and learning and growing with you as seventh graders. I will see you the next time. Again, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Thank you for participating.